Well, the vote for a new permanent Speaker of the House could be held as early as next week. Until a replacement is confirmed, Congressman Patrick McHenry will serve in the role. And this comes after Kevin McCarthy became the first Speaker of the House ever to be removed from leadership yesterday. 8 members of his own party drove his takedown. So I want to bring in Republican Congressman Joyce of Ohio. He voted to keep McCarthy as Speaker. Thanks for joining us, sir. You know, yesterday when I was watching the vote come down, I just was thinking, what is going on? Now we know that the House is going to grind to a halt, which means that all business on the Hill will grind to a halt. What is your message to Americans who are feeling frustrated by this process?
Well, 8 of President Biden's favorite Republicans teamed up with their Democratic counterparts to, replace a speaker who, by all accounts, was doing a great job. And, what really breaks my heart is on Saturday, did the right thing. None of us wanted to see the country shut down. He waited till the last minute, granted, but he got it done. And these people, they all say like they're doing something better for the country or the better interests of the country. And it's all self-flagellation. They're all just so happy with themselves that they are now all media stars and going out and about and spreading their own antics. It has nothing to do with good governance. Good governance is hard. And we've got our appropriations bills teed up ready to go, and we were going to restrain the spending in this House. We were going to start to put the handcuffs on this administration to tame the problem we have with inflation, to counter China, and to arm and pay for our defense. And guess what? That's ground to a halt now. We spend another week while we go through the same theatrics. And if you ask me, who would want to be Speaker when you know that this can happen to you at any given day?
Congressman, you raise a good point in that there are some members of Congress who have no legislative achievements to speak of, but have enough power to remove what was considered at one point one of the most powerful positions in government in the United States after the president and the vice president. But you said something interesting, and I just want to get your thoughts on what you meant by that. You said 8 of Joe Biden's favorite Republicans. A lot of people have said that if Speaker McCarthy, who needed Democrats to pass that CR, as you know, had perhaps offered some concessions to Hakeem Jeffries and the minority party, perhaps he would have survived this vote. But what does that mean? I'm trying to understand what you mean by 8 of Joe Biden's favorite Republicans.
We were, as I was talking about the bills that we were bringing forward, we were starting to tame inflation. We were going to curb spending. We were going to do the things that are necessary to try to put some handcuffs on this administration through the spending process. That's all we have in the House is our appropriation bills, and lay out for the American people what we'll do if we took control of the Senate and we took the presidency back. And what are we doing now? We had 45 days that Speaker McCarthy bought us last Saturday, and we're going to spend 10 days now shut down because we can't get another speaker, and who knows how much longer before we finally get a speaker. What is responsible about that? I really don't understand their theory. But it's great for the president because he gets to stay in charge.
Well, springboarding off of the word responsible, who is responsible for the conditions that we're seeing now? You sort of identified those 8 Republicans, and it's true, the vast majority of Republicans in the House voted to keep Speaker McCarthy in that position. But who's responsible for creating an environment where 8 Republicans, 8 members, can essentially hold the House hostage?
Because we have some perverse incentives here. The people can go on and play like they're actually fighting for this country and raise money online. The chief architect of yesterday's plan was sending out fundraising notes to members who were sitting there asking for more money. He made his plan known. He's out there fighting for the American people. How's fighting when you grind this country to a halt? You got to tell me, I'm missing something there. Because instead of focusing on the administration and their failures, if you focus on the 11,000 people coming across the border every single day, and then look at what we've got right now, chaos, thanks to them.
But if he's just a representative of a small group, a minority, a loud minority, it's still, by default, a powerful minority. I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, are other Republicans, not part of that group, maybe people like you, responsible for creating an environment that empowers individuals like Matt Gaetz?
Well, the Speaker cut the deal in the beginning to get it down to 1 vote, and now you see why they wanted a 1 vote, to allow somebody like the ringleader to get up yesterday and grind this place to a halt. And like I said, it falls right into the Democrats' hands, because now what is all the media talking about? Our inability to lead, our chaos, instead of talking about the real problems this country has, the inflation that's taking place on a daily basis, affecting the prices at the grocery store, affecting the prices at the gas station, the 11,000 people coming across our border every day, the fentanyl that's killing all our kids. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about these merry folks who went out and created havoc yesterday and have now come ground this place to a halt. It makes me sick.
Congressman, as you know, part of tackling those problems that you mentioned, which are real issues that are facing Americans every single day, is finding consensus with your counterparts across the aisle. But now the Republican Party is facing a situation where you have to find consensus within your own party, and that perhaps might prove difficult given that you have these rabble-rousers that do, as Anne-Marie pointed out, perhaps because of their media savvy and their ability to fundraise and to go on conservative stations to make their case, wield enormous power. So the question is, what kind of consensus will you all be able to find so that we don't have to witness another 15, 16 rounds of voting to find the next Speaker of the House of Representatives? Who would you like to see holding that gavel?
Hey, look, there's a lot of great candidates. I've heard their names going around in the last couple of days, and any one of them would make a fine speaker. But the thing is, that presumes there's going to be a race, and a race requires people getting to the requisite number that we witnessed on January 3rd or January 6th when Kevin finally became the speaker. So it's going to be tough to get the majority here for any one individual without making some concessions. But I tell you one concession I'm not backing up on is we have to change this rule, because one moron should not be able to dictate to this country how our Congress is going to operate.
So Congressman, then why did, it goes back to the question Anne-Marie was asking, why did Speaker McCarthy give in to those demands? I mean, to me, it's sort of like if they're asking for these demands that empower them to be able to force this vote yesterday, that meant to me, and I'm not a politician, I have never been in Washington, D.C., if you're asking for something, it means you intend to use it.
Exactly. But Kevin came in, everything he told him that he was going to do, he did. He performed on every level of every promise that he ever made, except, you're figuring that if he was doing all this stuff, no one would exercise this stupid rule against him. He felt that this was not going to occur. But unfortunately, the fantasy that's out there about fighting for the American people by doing this and fundraising off the poor backs and lying to these folks, telling them that you're doing something, is deceitful and it's a lie, and it deserves to have the attention that the media is drawing on us being in chaos. The fact that these people are wreaking havoc on a system that used to work and unfortunately is broken.
Congressman Joyce, would you want to be the Speaker?
Yeah, I want the Browns to win the Super Bowl too. But,
So you're saying not going to happen?
If drafted, I will not serve.
Congressman, thank you.
Thanks, Congressman.
Congressional correspondent Nicole Killian joins us now from Capitol Hill. She's with Republican Congressman Garrett Graves of Louisiana, who voted against ousting McCarthy. Nicole.
Thank you, and thank you, Congressman, for joining us. I first just want to get your reaction to President Biden. Obviously, he reiterated his desire to get funding passed for the government, which, as you know, you only have about 45 days to get that done. Given what's happening with this leadership shakeup, is it possible to get the government funded in the next month and a half?
Well, look, first of all, the president's right in that chaos isn't good for anyone. Let's be very clear on that. Secondly, by doing what Matt Gaetz did yesterday, you have created so much chaos and uncertainty in the House that our ability to get all these appropriations bills done within the roughly 45 days that we had left was going to be difficult to begin with. This is potentially a setback of weeks, and I hate to even say this, but potentially even longer.
I mean, do you think it's possible that the government could shut down next month?
I think that absolutely anything is possible at this point. That certainly is something that could happen. I want to be clear. I don't think shutdowns are good. I think we need to work to avoid it. But in this case, that is absolutely something that's possible, because without a Speaker of the House in place, the House is largely paralyzed at this point.
He also called for funding for Ukraine, which, of course, the Biden administration has requested. But again, given this divide right now in your your conference. Is that even possible at this point?
Well, I think where the American public is at this point is people are really struggling with the concept that we're going to help protect the border of Ukraine and not protect the border of the United States. Folks see that disparity as being unreasonable. I agree. I think that we've got to address our American southern border crisis, and we certainly, I think, can step in and work with our European allies to provide stability and assistance to help thwart Putin's aggression, but you can't do that and leave your own southern border open.
I know that, I kind of want to take a step back here for people who are just wondering what's going on here on Capitol Hill. I mean, just very briefly, explain how we got here. And did you personally see this coming?
I unfortunately did see it coming very early in the year. In January, we were having the initial speaker discussion. What happened is that a very small group, in fact, eight House Republicans got together with 208 congressional Democrats. So I'm going to say that again. We have a Republican majority in the House, and usually the majority party is the one that makes decisions. In this case, just 8 of those majority members joined with 208 minority members and threw out the Speaker of the House, creating total chaos, doing it for fabricated conditions. And I'm going to pull up a prop here. I mean, this is what this is about. It's about raising campaign contributions, millions and millions of dollars. These texts were coming through during the attempt to vacate the Speaker's race, using government actions and trying to raise money off of it, which I think should be illegal. I think it's disgusting and some of the swampiest behavior you can have. And so it's just, we need to focus on path forward. I think one of the first things we need to do before electing a new Speaker is help to solidify the position. This is third in line to the President of the United States. It's unreasonable to have this type of chaos or vulnerability.
I know you don't approve of what Matt Gaetz did, but did you yourself draft a motion to vacate at one point?
I did. I did, and let me explain that. So Matt Gaetz was out there dangling or threatening this for weeks whenever we were trying to work on cutting government spending, trying to get appropriations bill moving forward, trying to get the border secure. Matt was dangling it and threatening. Said, look, if this is what you're going to do, let's get it over with. Let's go ahead and do this now.
But do you think the Speaker should have called his bluff? I mean, would he still be in this job if he didn't move forward with that vote yesterday?
Look, I'm not going to go back and second guess. I think Kevin McCarthy is one of the best strategists, has been one of the most successful speakers in advancing wins through the House of Representatives in modern times. I'm not going to second guess his decisions.
I know you worked very closely with him during the whole debt limit deal, and that was a concern that many Republicans had, that he gave away the farm.
No, hang on. But I want to push back on that. 2/3 of the Republicans voted for it. This was a situation where Matt Gaetz simply did not understand that legislation. It was the largest savings in American history. Could you come in and say, well, it was only $2.1 trillion and should have been 2.2? Sure. But you know what? You had Chuck Schumer up against, and you had the President of the United States, both Democrats. That was a huge win for the American public.
But as we watch this appropriations fight play out, which is currently stalled now because of this new speaker fight, did you all live up to your end of the bargain? Because the White House says you didn't.
White House, first of all, let's be clear. We negotiated changes in that same debt deal to the National Environmental Policy Act and others. The White House came straight out of the gates and violated the agreement. They violated the agreement and the work requirements for welfare programs as well. So let's be clear. They were the first ones to violate the agreement. Second of all, what the Speaker did is we came in and we provided appropriations bills that were below. Those were caps or limits. So going below is not a violation. And at the end of the day, that was just a House position. Ultimately, the Senate appropriated even higher numbers. So I think that most people would rationalize that what's going to happen is that you're actually going to come together somewhere in the middle, probably close to where those debt limit numbers were.
And then very briefly, before we let you go, we have learned that Majority Leader Steve Scalise is going to run for Speaker, as is Jim Jordan. Could you support either one of those individuals?
Look, there are a handful of people that are being discussed. There's some very qualified candidates. I think it's premature to get into that discussion. I think the first discussion that House members need to be having is helping to stabilize the position of Speaker of the House and not allow this gamesmanship or circus that we saw go down yesterday, where any one member of the House can come in and get together with AOC or whoever else and evict the Speaker of the House.
Congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now from Capitol Hill. We see he is there with Republican Congressman Matt Rosendale of Montana, who was one of the Republicans who voted to oust McCarthy.
And Congressman Rosendale, oh, by the way, represents one of the biggest pieces of America in Congress, the eastern three-quarters.
And most beautiful.
And the most beautiful part of Montana, the eastern three-quarters of Montana. So we're standing a few feet away from the House chamber where the lights are off, doors are locked, and there's no business indefinitely. Did you envision that when you voted yesterday to oust the Speaker?
Well, what I'm hoping is that we can get back to the appropriations process. There's absolutely no reason that the committees can't continue to function. The remaining bills, we've got 8.
You think they can still function the House even without a full-time Speaker?
Sure, we have Speaker Pro Tem, and the Speaker Pro Tem can actually allow certain functions to take place, but outside of the events of the floor, what we can do is conduct the business of the committees. So the Rules Committee can still meet, and the Appropriations Committees can still meet and finish that work that really helped to culminate the removal of Speaker McCarthy yesterday, because that work had not been done, which forced us to go to a continuing resolution that the vast majority of the Republicans opposed.
When he had his press conference last night, his exit press conference, he actually name-dropped you as somebody he was specifically concerned with and characterized it as you being part of a group that burned the place down, metaphorically. What do you make of that, and how would you respond?
I think that you're going to hear some statements made over the next probably week where tempers are hot and tensions are high, and people will probably be sorry that they made those statements sometime in the future. And I don't take any of it personally. I truly don't. I will tell you that the small majority that we are working with right now has given the most conservative members of the Republican conference the ability to bring the entire conference over to the right, and that's why we've seen H.R. 1, our domestic energy legislation, was passed. It was a very conservative document. H.R. 2, I've been told by folks around here that it's the most comprehensive and conservative border security and immigration legislation that has been passed.
But these bills aren't getting through the Senate, and a new speaker may not have any better luck getting anything into actual law among your priorities.
So those bills aren't part of the appropriations package, and that's when it starts getting down in the weeds. The appropriations bills, actually, the 12 separate bills fund government, and that is where we are able to fund separate programs to make sure our border is secure, to make sure our domestic energy is produced. And we were, because that small group again forced the Speaker to bring them to the floor, we were able to pass the Department of Defense appropriations bill. We were able to pass the Department of Homeland Security appropriations bill.
And the appropriations work that was supposed to happen this week has now been disrupted. But let's put that aside for a moment. You know, some of your fellow Republicans say this move makes a government shutdown more likely in November because Speaker McCarthy, former Speaker McCarthy, was kind of a firewall to a shutdown and to a debt ceiling crisis.
No, I think he was actually the engineer of the shutdown. I think he was the engineer of the debt crisis. The Budget Act of 1974 calls for the appropriation bills to be completed by June 30th. He's the Speaker. He knows that. That law has been in place since 1974.
Kind of pulled the escape hatch, though, to prevent a shutdown, which nobody wanted.
But the true leadership would have made sure that those appropriation bills were completed by June 30th. Guess what? Every legislature across the country is able to complete their work and pass a balanced budget in the appropriate time. We didn't have it by June 30th. We didn't have them by July 30th. We didn't have them by August 30th. And so I say that this was an engineered crisis of Kevin McCarthy's doing that led us to that problem.
The argument over appropriations continues despite him being gone. Are you running for Speaker?
I am not running for Speaker. That I will tell you. You know, there's a lot of really, really talented individuals that have already raised their hand up, which goes to prove our point that we were making in January. Once the king is removed, we'll find out who else wants to run. And what I say is, I'm going to consider all of those individuals. There's only 2 people that I will not vote for, and that's Kevin McCarthy and Matt Rosendale.
Matt Rosendale, thank you for your time. We appreciate you being so generous with it. Now back to you.
Scott McFarland, thank you for that, and share our thanks with Congressman Rosendale.